President Trump looked Governor Newsom dead in the eye, the damning file open on the resolute desk. "You came to threaten a president with a lie, Gavin." Trump's voice was cold steel. "Did you ever stop to ask yourself who gave you that lie, and why?" The air in the Oval Office crackled, a silent storm about to break over the nation. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Oval Office, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, each one seemingly a silent witness to the tension coiling in the room. President Donald Trump sat behind the resolute desk, his posture a study in controlled power. He steepled his fingers, his gaze fixed on the man seated opposite him, California's Governor, Gavin Newsom. The meeting, ostensibly about federal resources for border security, had been a tedious dance of political obstruction. Newsom had deflected, postured, and resisted every proposal. Now, he was making his move. "Mr. President," Newsom began, his voice a slick, condescending purr. He leaned forward, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Perhaps we're approaching this from the wrong angle. Cooperation requires trust. And trust, well, it's a fragile thing. It would be a shame if certain sensitive federal operations were to be undermined by a lack of public confidence." President Trump remained silent, his expression unreadable. He simply watched, letting the governor spin his own web. "Take, for instance, Operation Sea Guardian," Newsom continued, dropping the name of a highly classified naval intelligence program. "It's a vital mission, of course. But there are whispers, Mr. President. Reports of missteps. Things that the American people, and certainly the international community, might find deeply troubling. It would be a catastrophe if details of, say, the Angel Island incident were to leak. A real catastrophe." There it was, the threat, wrapped in the silken glove of feigned concern. Newsom wasn't just bluffing. The mention of Angel Island, a code name for a specific sub-operation, was a clear signal. He had something, or he thought he had something. President Trump didn't flinch. He saw the arrogance in Newsom's eyes, the self-satisfied belief that he had the upper hand, that he could blackmail the President of the United States into caving to his state's demands. It was a pathetic, dangerous miscalculation. With a slow, deliberate movement, President Trump straightened a stack of papers on his desk. "Governor," he said, his voice even and calm, betraying none of the cold fury building within him. "I appreciate you bringing your concerns to my attention. Your perspective is noted." He stood up, a clear dismissal. "Thank you for your time. The meeting is over." Newsom's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He had expected a reaction. Anger, negotiation, fear. He got none of it. He was being ushered out like a junior staffer. As he walked out of the Oval Office, he mistook the president's composure for weakness. He thought he had planted the seed of fear. In reality, he had just armed a bomb and handed the detonator to his opponent. The moment the door clicked shut, the president's demeanor shifted. The calm exterior fell away, replaced by the sharp, focused intensity of a commander-in-chief. He buzzed his chief of staff. "Get me General Madsen. Secure line. Now." Minutes later, the grizzled, four-star general's face appeared on the monitor. Madsen was a man of few words and unquestionable loyalty, the head of national intelligence. "Mr. President." "General?" Trump's voice was clipped, precise. "Governor Newsom was just in my office. He tried to leverage a classified operation. He mentioned Angel Island. I want to know who he's talking to. I want to know where he got his information. I want a full signals intelligence workup. Back-channel communications, the whole 9 yards. I want to know who is pulling his strings. This has a footprint. I want you to find it. Eyes only, General. Yours and mine." "Understood, Mr. President," Madsen said, and the screen went dark. The hours that followed were a masterclass in executive action. While the press speculated about the, quote, tense but unproductive meeting, President Trump and his inner circle were moving silently and swiftly. The nation's most powerful intelligence apparatus, directed by a president who trusted his instincts, began to unravel Gavin Newsom's treacherous gamble. The first reports came in just after lunch. Encrypted messages from a burner phone registered to a shell corporation tied to one of Newsom's top aides. The messages were to a known foreign intelligence officer, an operative from a rival nation known for its sophisticated disinformation campaigns. By late afternoon, the picture was chillingly clear. General Madsen stood before the president in the Situation Room, a single thin file in his hand. "It's a trap, Mr. President," Madsen said, his voice grave. And he walked right into it. He laid out the details. The foreign adversary, seeking to sow chaos and weaken the United States, had fabricated a dossier. It was filled with convincing, but ultimately false, intelligence about Operation Sea Guardian. They created a narrative of failure and corruption, specifically targeting the, quote, Angel Island component. They knew Newsom's ambition and his animosity toward the president made him the perfect delivery system. They fed it to him through a back channel, Madsen explained, pointing to a grainy satellite photo of Newsom's aide meeting with the foreign operative in a quiet park in Geneva. Newsom was so arrogant, so eager to find a weapon to use against you, he never stopped to verify its authenticity. He never considered he was being played. He saw a dagger aimed at you, and he grabbed it, not realizing it was poisoned. President Trump listened, his jaw set like granite. This was worse than simple political blackmail. This was a governor of a major state allowing himself to be used as a puppet by a hostile foreign power. It was a profound betrayal of his office and his country. "He didn't just try to threaten me," Trump said, his voice a low growl. "He made himself a willing pawn in an attack on the United States. He gave our enemies a seat at the table." He looked at Madsen, his eyes blazing. "They wanted to create chaos. They wanted to turn us against each other. Well, we're going to turn this right back on them." He picked up the secure phone. "Get me the Attorney General, and tell the press office to prepare the briefing room. I'm addressing the nation. Tonight." As evening fell, the nation's attention turned to the White House. An unscheduled presidential address always signaled something of grave importance. In his Sacramento office, Governor Gavin Newsom watched, a glass of expensive wine in his hand. He felt a surge of triumph. He believed the president was about to announce a concession, cornered by the threat of the Angel Island leak. He thought he had won. President Trump walked to the podium, projecting an aura of solemn strength and resolve. He began by speaking about the importance of national security and the sacred duty of every elected official to protect it. Then he pivoted. "But tonight, I am not here to talk about threats from abroad," he said, his gaze fixed on the camera lens. "Tonight, I must speak about a more sinister threat, a threat that comes from within, born of reckless ambition and a stunning betrayal of public trust." In Sacramento, Newsom's smug expression began to fade. The president laid out the details of the foreign plot, methodically, and with devastating clarity. He explained how a rival nation had sought to destabilize the country by feeding false information to an American leader. "They needed a pawn," President Trump declared, his voice ringing with authority. "Someone whose hatred for his political opponents was so great, he would blindly accept a lie if he thought he could use it as a weapon. They found such a man in California's governor, Gavin Newsom." Newsom choked on his wine. His face went pale. On the large screens behind the president, declassified documents flashed into view. A redacted transcript of the aide's encrypted messages. A timeline of Newsom's communications. The photograph from the park in Geneva. "Governor Newsom came to this office," President Trump continued, his voice resonating with moral power, "and attempted to use this foreign-made lie to blackmail the President of the United States. He put his own petty political agenda above the security of our nation. He was willing to compromise a vital intelligence operation and endanger American lives, all for a sliver of perceived power." The president leaned into the microphone, his eyes like chips of ice. "Let me be clear. This is not about politics, this is about loyalty. Loyalty to this flag, to our Constitution, and to the American people. A sacred line was crossed. Not by a foreign power alone, but by an American leader who volunteered to be their instrument. Therefore," the president announced, "I have instructed the Department of Justice to launch a full investigation into Governor Newsom and his contacts with this foreign power. We will follow the facts wherever they lead. We will defend this nation from all enemies, foreign and domestic." In his office, Gavin Newsom stared in horror at the screen. His phone was exploding with calls he couldn't answer. News alerts were already flashing across the bottom of the screen. President Trump accuses Governor Newsom of collusion with foreign power. DOJ launches investigation. Asterisk. He was ruined. His arrogant threat had been turned into a public execution. He had brought a knife he thought was sharp, only to discover it was a prop in a much larger play, and he was the fool on stage. Back in the Oval Office, the address over, a quiet calm had returned. President Trump stood looking out the window at the Washington Monument, lit brightly against the dark sky. General Madsen entered the room. "A masterful move, Mr. President," the general said quietly. "It wasn't a move, General." President Trump corrected him, his voice low but firm. "It was a duty. They thought they could use our political divisions to break us. They handed a fool a weapon, and he tried to use it. All we did was show the world the truth." He turned from the window, his face a mask of iron resolve. "They learned a valuable lesson tonight. This White House does not buckle to threats. And this president does not yield when the security of his country is at stake." He had faced down the threat, exposed the traitor, and in doing so, turned a malicious foreign plot into an undeniable demonstration of American strength and his own unwavering leadership. The hero had not only defeated the antagonist, he had used the antagonist's own arrogance as the very tool of his destruction. What do you think was the critical moment that sealed Governor Newsom's fate? Was it accepting the dossier, or was it his arrogance in confronting the president? Let us know your take in the comments. And if you enjoy stories of high-stakes strategy and moral conviction, be sure to subscribe for more.